recording on OBS. Hop onto my channel. It should just automatically start it, but it did. Okay. Yep. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna check it on my other computer real quick just to make sure everything's actually working. Everything's good. Yeah, okay. We're actually going. We are actually going now. Okay. How are you doing?
Pardon?
Yeah, I got it. Everything's going now.
Groovy.
Okay, so what's up? How are you doing?
I'm good. Just quickly preface all of this by saying I am very leftist. I'm anarcho-communist, so that's where all of my perspective comes from. So everything has to be taken with a very heavy political bias when I'm talking about this stuff. Because I am diametrically opposed to Scarcella, because obviously she's quite conservative with her views. So that's something I just wanted to make sure that is
Clear,
is let known. Because if I say all this, it's not a known science. It's sociology. It's stuff that changes all the time, and so it's very important to not take everything that everyone says as concrete fact with this stuff, because obviously it all changes and it's all wildly different.
Right, but when it comes to some things, we do have to work under the best knowledge we have, I guess, or the best assumptions we can make about any given thing, because certain things require us to take action, right? And we're never going to know everything. Obviously, it's we're our view when it comes to transports and stuff is probably going to be refined over the coming decade or so. But we still have to work with what we know now, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's we're not. This isn't the end of history, so we don't know what we will know, and so we are still doing stuff because time doesn't stop because we don't know stuff. So yeah, we do have to just go with what we know, and there's a lot of different theories about it, and a lot of different ideas for solutions, and none of them, in my opinion, really work with sports, especially because there are some trans women who do have a huge amount of advantage just because they were athletes, they're trained athletes, and having that the separation from training. So if women don't train with men, or the men don't train with women, they won't be on a level playing ground.
I'm sorry. Can you expand on that? Are you saying if they don't go through the same training regimens, that's kind of what causes some of the big differences, or?
There's a social idea that men are better than women, in sports, in thinking and everything, and so very early you'll find a women's team, a girls' team and a boys' team, and they will have different maybe not on purpose, but they will have different training regimens because women are often seen as weaker, or women are seen as less able, and that's obviously not what we see, because we see a lot of women doing amazing things in sports, but they're just not. If you were the WNBA and the NBA, if they were trained at the same time, I'm of the opinion that the women would be just as good, if not better, as the men.
Wait, really? Hold on. Let me lay out my thoughts when it comes to that really quick. So it seems like men really just kind of have an advantage when it comes to physical stuff. Men like going through puberty, you're like absolutely flooded with testosterone. It grants you, even for like scrawnier guys, a lot more muscle density, just our muscle mass in general. You have thicker bones to compensate for that stuff. There's when it comes to the higher levels of sports, I've heard like men can have way less body fat than women, right? Women have to have like a decent amount of body fat on them at all times to like for their bodies to actually function, right? Like especially when it comes to like their chest, like there are certain like physical requirements they have when it comes to fat that men just don't. So that like it seems like men really do just perform better when it comes to physical activities, like overall. This seems to be just like a biological truth.
Uh, yes, but that a lot of sports are about like strategy as well, and you'll see a lot of like weaker people can do just as well, if not better. Like again, with I'm going to harp on about basketball for a little bit, but the people in the NFL, they have incredible tactics, and they're like the men like really know what they're doing, and like I've watched NBA and they shoot hoops from fucking like the 3-point line easy, but they just don't have the same amount of like tactical know-how by the looks of it. From what I've seen, like I'm not a sports person, but that's what I've seen.
Well,
so that's it's
I would say, especially with the upper levels of sports, once again, anybody playing in those leagues are going to be like, I mean, they're obviously going to be like some of the best in the world, right? Once again, if you're playing so and just to make it clear, you were saying that like strategy wise, or just like how they end up playing the game, men are just like when it comes to how they're trained, they're given like better strategies to like help them win more. Sorry, that's a stupid way of putting it, but is that more or less what you're trying to say?
I effectively, yeah. I don't think that's like a decision that the coaches and trainers have made. I think that's just a it's like an implicit bias that happens in most people, because yeah, we've been like the society at the moment that we have is very well, what's going towards women can do everything. It's with very based on a patriarchal society, and that's how almost everyone views their world is through the lens of men.
Well,
so that's kind of how I see it as it what as like the reason that men and women are separated in sports.
So what about something relatively simple? Let's say like weightlifting. So there are strategies involved, of course, but overall it's relatively simple, like compared to like a team sport.
Yeah, that is one of the things that like men do have an advantage in that in incredibly physical sports like weightlifting. It is brute strength. The men do have an advantage.
Okay, so you do like kind of agree that like men are typically, like on average, men are probably going to be stronger than your average woman. Are we like at a common ground or like a common place there anyway?
Yeah, on average, yeah, but at the same time, with athletes aren't average people. They're we're talking about the paragons, and the on average male athletes are often stronger and are quicker. They do have they do have certain biological advantages, but I don't think that that's enough for men to be better than women in a lot of circumstances.
I kind of disagree. So okay, here let's go back to the strategy thing really quick. So how I see strategies, even like like societally made, like games, crap like that. Strategies typically evolve. It's just like the best way to go about getting the result you want, and typically it's kind of like a whittling down of like things people do within those games, and you almost always come to this like this one way of going about it, or like this little packet of strategies that you deploy in order to like win. Well, so kind of what I'm saying is I would be amazed if especially at the like higher end of like women's sports, I would be amazed if you didn't see similar strategies to like the strategies men use, just because like for just, like purely like practical reasons. I would be absolutely mind blown. I don't. I understand what you mean when it comes to like the patriarchy, viewing men as just being better, and that can like bias the coaches into like not giving women the same training or as good of training as they do men. And I would probably wager that there are some differences between how men and women are trained in like the same sport, because different physiologies, right? There's going to be some differences, but overall, I would say I would be amazed. I would be straight up amazed if the strategies were like insanely different, like to the point where like it like to the point where women are just using completely like ineffectual like strategies compared to what men are using. Like they're just kind of like kids kicking around a soccer ball. Sorry,
I don't
go
use
ahead.
ineffective strategies. I think that the strategies used work, obviously, because they're professional people win all the time. But I think that they're not the same. They're not exactly the same strategies. I think that people think about what will work in that situation. So in football, if you have a team with a really strong offense, you counter with a really good defense, kind of thing, and that's the ways that they counter each other would be different because of the way that men perceive women, like the way that men perceive how women's brains work.
Well,
Which is again not a conscious decision that they make. It's something that's like it's so ingrained that women think and act and move differently that they do end up using different techniques and different.
well, here just to help me out a little bit, could you give me an example, like a specific sport where, in like the same situation, a woman's team is trained to do this thing, where a men's team is trained to do this thing? Like, yeah, can you give me an example of like pretty divergent like strategies? Oh, hello. Okay.
There's not 100%. I can't think of one right off the top of my head at the moment. I think you got me there. Actually,
well, no, it's okay. Just because you don't know doesn't necessarily mean like you're wrong or anything. Because I don't know it either. I've never been
right as well. So that is something that I had just like. Well, that's obviously how it works, even though it might not be. That's.
Yeah, I'd say once.
So yeah,
Oh, okay. So I'm sure you're like more or less like, well, yeah, I'm sure you're more or less familiar with like how evolution works. I'll go back to that to try to. I'm not explaining myself incredibly well. I'm gonna try this again. So when it comes to evolution, species that like you almost never see them doing something that isn't like, oh no, that's not the right way to put it. When it comes to species in an environment, they're always pushed to perform in a certain way because that is maybe not the most advantageous way to go about it in that environment, but it's a way that will end up benefiting them. It's a way for them to survive, pass on their genes, and it's like you have this huge population, and it's essentially whittled down to this really fine point, and that's the species we have like today. And it's whittled down by all those environmental factors, all these practical reasons. That's how I view strategy in sports. Like, let's say you have two completely fresh teams that don't have any strategies for the game, like it's a completely new game. Eventually, like the more times they play it, the more they will come to understand the game and how the other team is going to react to certain plays, and it'll get whittled down to this really fine point where you have like these handful of strategies that just work really, really well and are really, really hard to counter. I feel like most sports is probably going to fall along those lines, if that makes sense. Like whether it be a man's team, like or a woman's team, they're going to try to use the optimal strategies, and they're probably very, very like intimately familiar with the strategies and the context which they need to like use them in. I just have a hard time believing that like, yeah, or I guess you weren't saying that they're necessarily trained. It's just they're trained in a different way that makes them less effective. They're not exactly less effective strategies. They're just not the optimal ones. Is that kind of what you're? But
Yeah, that's
all,
kind of what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
but does that all make sense? Like, essentially, if you have one woman's team that ends up using like male strategies, then if it really is the strategies, they will end up being the top of that field when it comes to women's sports. I mean, all it takes is just one team, and then it like that blows the lid open, and everybody's going to start using those strategies. Like that's more or less how it usually plays out, right?
That's how I think
Here,
it will go down.
So I vape, but I don't like doing it on camera. So if I turn off my camera, you can keep talking. I'm just but yeah, okay, go ahead, keep going.
That is how I assume it would end up going down. I think if they use the same strategies and they train the same way, it will go down to just who has the raw performance that is better. And that would be a really interesting match to see, because I think that will just be it will confirm or deny a lot of theories about like if men do it, like have an innate advantage, because there are three outcomes of that kind of thing, which is men absolutely steamroll the women, that it ends in a dead heat, or the women steamroll the men. That those are the three big outcomes, and which would show what it will show in a single like verifiable data point, like where we're at on whether or not like it is all about strategy, or if like raw performance does have that big of an impact.
Well,
because
that's kind of where I stand. I think that's the world we live in. I think that like the strategies probably don't differ. They probably only differ in so much as the physiology differs, as in there might be different strategies simply because of how women are built versus men. But otherwise, they're like that seems to be the case. Like otherwise, I would be amazed once again if like men and women were genuinely taught to play these sports in like completely different ways, to the point where women just automatically don't have an advantage or can't compete at all. Like that would actually blow my mind. Well, there are also like some things, like I'm sure you've heard about that example where like professional soccer, like women's soccer team played against like it was either a high school warrior team. Yeah, it's because of like once again men are like, it might not seem like the biggest difference in the world, but it really is. Like for me, I've arm wrestled a few women, and it's like never a competition ever. I'm not the biggest guy, if you can't tell. Like I mean, I got some muscle, but I'm not the biggest guy in the world. But I can still beat out pretty much like any and every woman I have ever fucking arm wrestled. It probably takes somebody that like a woman that weightlifts like a crap ton, like is really really good about bodybuilding, to actually beat just kind of like a scrawnier guy like me, right? Like men are just physically so much stronger, and that's why we have like those things. That's why like women need to guard themselves a lot of times, right? When it comes to like protect themselves, like when they go out to bars or like the club or whatever, because like men can like pretty easily overpower like almost any woman they're likely to meet. So like in a lot of cases, we recognize that these differences are like there, and they're big enough to the point where we need to like respect those differences and like try to work around them. But when it comes to sports, it seems like there's some denial there, especially when it comes to trans women. So like I think that the differences are very obviously, it speaks for itself. Like they're obviously different enough to the point where like men just have a natural advantage over women when it comes to just like almost any like physical activity. It just seems to be the case. I don't know if that's like necessarily like, maybe when it comes to like the patriarchy and viewing men as being better, that can have some influence. But overall, I think it's just kind of a truth of our world that men are just, kind of more physically capable than women in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I would agree with everything you've said there. That is a correct way of seeing things. I just think that at the peak of ability, the gap does close.
I don't actually. Oh man, I would need to look stuff up. But some of the things I've heard about, like the difference between like a male performance and female performance, there's like a pretty big. It's a chunky gap. Like that's from my memory, though. I could be wrong.
Fair enough. That's it's not something I've extensively researched. It's a lot of anecdotal stuff. So that's where my that's my view on it. I
So, do you genuinely think, like, let's say we mixed like male and female sports, and everybody was trained equally? Do you really think that we would ever see like a women's team or like a woman like being on top?
So do you remember that Leah Thomas, the swimmer who she transitioned into a woman and then she set like a record at a pool or something?
That sounds really familiar. Yeah.
She transitioned. She'd been transitioned for a couple of years, and she got into she was a semi-professional swimmer. I don't know how it works in America, but she was like swimming for the college team. And then she joined this competition, and in one race she absolutely smoked everyone else, and she set a record for that pool in that campus for that particular race. But then it wasn't a like even a county record. It like so that like for women. So there have been women who swam fast, and this is a trained trans woman athlete who she did set a course record on that particular campus for women, but she didn't do anything. She didn't like smash all the other records everywhere else.
Well, right,
and
but
she
like
also
she was only competing at a college level, right? So of course it was probably only going to be like like in that domain, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Like
So and it's also incredibly it's an incredibly limited data point as well anyway, because obviously in colleges male athletes have been shown to get preferential treatment over or like more budget for training than
oh, so that's an interesting point. So do you think that really is all just about like patriarchy, or do you think that maybe like because male sports tends to be like that's like the highest level of like competition we have, it's just it attracts more interest, and that's why it gets more funding?
that's my view on it. Yeah, that's how I understand the way that sports works, because it wasn't until quite recently that you got women's football teams or women's soccer teams or anything. It was I don't even know if there is any women's football teams. I haven't been following that.
Wait, is that true? When was like that seems hold on.
Well, because you had you just didn't see it until quite recently. Like the Women's World Cup for soccer, it was completely under the radar for everyone until a couple of years ago.
Okay, under the radar, I could see. Yeah. If that's what you meant by under the radar, and actually, this is kind of interesting. The first women's like soccer club wasn't made till like 1894, so it has been a little while, but that's still like. Oh, I don't know when soccer became like. Wait, I have so many questions. No, I'm not gonna do this. Sorry, I just started going down like a fucking like, question tree.
Soccer was invented in Henry VIII times, so like Tudor era England. So it's really? A very old.
That's interesting. Okay, now I have to look at that. Wait.
From what I can remember off the top of my head.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. I'm not. Yeah. Oh, okay. So for the modernized version, though, that was like mid 1800s. But like that's to be clear, the modern version of soccer. So it seems like it has been around for a long time. But it's been adapted in like the past couple centuries. Um, but no, okay, sorry, we're getting sidetracked. Once again, I haven't been getting much sleep. I'm kind of spacey and everywhere right now. Okay, here, let me. So that's actually a really good example. I would say that's a really good example of what I was talking about. If you have like somebody that was a biological like born as a male and then transitioned to being a female, and I have no idea how long this person had been transitioning before they got on the like college swimming team or whatever, but it does seem like there are cases that pop up like that. I mean, trans people are pretty few and far between, right? They don't make up that big of a like portion of society. But occasionally, when you do have a trans person compete in the like male or women's league, whatever they identify as, it seems like sorry, only for trans women, because trans men they get the shit end of the stick, right? They get absolutely fucked. But trans women seem to be able to like smash records really, really easily, which kind of goes to show that it seems like going through a male puberty does kind of gift you with certain like physical, like abilities, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a correct assumption to make.
Well, and plus, like ignoring this sort of thing, like it is interesting. I've heard a couple of people talk about this before, and it's interesting how like the focus is really only on trans women destroying women's sports, but no one seems to give a crap about the fact that trans men aren't going to be competitive like ever. I mean, it's like for instance, like people that were biologically born a male, they're fine with that identity, the stick as a male. They've had like since they were like 11 or 12, they've been like freaking just absolutely bombarded with testosterone, right? But then if you have a trans man that says, let's say they like transition like around like 18, 20, something like that, they're already like what 5, 6 years behind or something like that. Or more like what? Yeah, 6 or 7 years. So they're like, there's no way they're really going to be able to catch up there. Plus, when it comes to hormone replacement therapy, that it's not like absolutely effective, right? It can't erase like everything that happened when you went through like your first puberty, right? I mean, they're like structural things, like especially with the face. I've heard that a lot of trans men and women like have a problem with like just the structure of the face after like the wrong puberty and stuff like that. And it seems like that's really hard to change. There are also like voice things, right? Hormones don't really affect your voice after puberty. It's kind of stuck where it is, so you have to go through vocal training to like adapt your voice rather than like physically change it. And then, of course, once again, if you train as a man for a little while and then try to transition to being a woman, first off, even if you didn't train, like you still have the advantages of going through that like testosterone fueled puberty. But if you did train, that's just you're like piling on like bone density, which allows you to have more muscle. You have just more muscle mass and density overall. And not all of that, just like when it comes to facial structure, like vocal stuff, other problems trans people have. Like you can't just erase all of that, right? You can't just completely get rid of it. So that's why it seems like I'm fine with like trying to come up with a different way to incorporate trans people. I don't know about having like trans sports like as a separate thing. That I would have to think about that, but I've heard like when it comes to like weight classes or like testosterone classes and stuff like that, those like ideas sound kind of interesting. I don't know, like maybe we could try something like that out, but I don't think we should be throwing these people into sports as is. I think that's a bad idea for trans men and for cis women.
Oh yeah, so the way that the way that sports is currently set up is not it doesn't work with trans people in mind. It just there's no way that it works. We wouldn't be having this exact conversation if it worked, But with the hormone stuff, there is a huge amount of sexual dimorphism in humans in people, which is onset by hormones. But like things like my size, my height, my voice, you could probably tell I've got quite a deep voice. That's all. It's all affected by testosterone. So trans men who've gone through they've gone through puberty. It's the second puberty of going on testosterone. It's testosterone is additive. It doesn't change. It adds on top. So you can't go back from that. So trans men, they take testosterone. They will get higher muscle mass. They will get deeper voices. They will start growing hair and stuff. That's something that testosterone does.
Right, but they're starting so much later, typically, unless they were one of the lucky few that got on puberty blockers, right, and like started at like maybe 13 or 14 or something like that. I mean, a lot of trans men are starting, decently late. So like when it comes to competitive advantages, they're like super behind the curve there, right?
Yeah, 100%. They're really behind on the physicality of sports at that point, and I don't think they will. I don't think they will ever fully catch up unless they, of course, were some of the lucky ones who managed to transition very early, who they managed to get on T or like hormone blockers at a very young age, like to completely counteract their first puberty, because that would just like delay their puberty until they start taking testosterone, and then they'll have a male puberty and start exhibiting a lot of these things. But as a society, I don't think we're ready for. I don't think we have the headspace to let trans people transition early on in their lives, because we're still.
That's an interesting conversation as well. It seems like puberty blockers are super safe. It seems like, puberty blockers mixed with therapy. I understand people that are going through this are really young. They're still figuring themselves out. We were all dipshits when we were that age. But if you're talking to like a trained professional who's there to like sort things out and see if this is actually what you want to do, and that's what it should be, right? Puberty blockers to make sure you don't go through the wrong puberty, and it gives you time to like talk with somebody that can help you, work this stuff out. I think it sounds like a great solution, especially since, once again, if you go through the wrong puberty, you're kind of like cursed with like certain changes to your body that you're never fully going to be able to like overcome, at least in a lot of cases. Once again, there's some lucky trans people that do have like the right physiology to like, accommodate, that switch. But most don't. So it seems like such a clear cut, like, let's do it sort of thing. But so many people are like terrified of it. I don't.
There have been a lot of studies on hormone blockers on young people, and they have been found to be almost entirely safe. Like you get the normal side effects of the fact that it's medication, but like it's entirely a safe thing for kids to use. We give it to cis children all the time if they have complications with their puberty, if they start getting growing pains or stuff. We do put cis people on puberty blockers in order to make their lives easier. So we do know that they're safe, but because it's for trans people, it's viewed as icky and bad, which is a huge thing that we do need to work on as a society. Because
luckily, it seems like trans acceptance is like the LGBT community has been pretty good about pushing a trans acceptance. Well, and a lot of people I talk to, at the very least, there's like this baseline argument for trans people that I use if I can't convince somebody, because my argument's always like the social role argument. If someone acts like a woman, they look like a woman, they perform all the same functions in society as a woman, outside of reproduction, of course, even though we could potentially get there at some point. And of course, there are cis women that can't reproduce. That's essentially a woman. Like, anyway, you kind of put it, like if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? Like that sort of thing. I don't think I've heard one like decent argument against that. And whenever I bring it up, people are always like, "Yeah, but biology is like, I'm not talking about biology. We're talking about sociology. There's two different things there."
That's been coined by certain gender gender philosophers to be it's gender performativity. So there are a couple of different ways that gender is expressed. You've got your identity and your expression, and the social roles are the expression of your gender.
Right.
And they kind of they pose that the gender in and of itself, the way that we view gender as a society, is performative, because we do things that we think are manly, or we do things that we think are feminine, and we see them as masculine or feminine based on the society that we have, which really it's just another way of explaining the roles in the society that you were talking about, which is I think you're entirely on the money with that, because that is exactly how we view people. If someone if you see someone who looks like a man, you're going to assume that they're a man until proven otherwise. And same thing with women. So that it is a social role feels, it's like quite archaic a way to put it, but it is correct. Well, it is functionally.
Yeah, and there's also, of course, a biological argument for trans people. It seems like there are differences in the brain that do make them align more with the gender they were not born into, right? So there even is a biological argument, but people don't seem to like to accept that either. So I don't. Oh, there's I don't know if you've ever watched that. I think it was a Stanford professor. He gives lectures. There's a whole series that got millions of views. It's like a lecture on human evolution and stuff like that. There's one segment where he covers trans people and talks about the neurology, the differences. And it seems indisputable at this point that the trans people really do have a different they have brains that match up with what they're trying to transition to. So I don't. It just drives me wild. But I was going to say, so we might agree with the social role thing. How do you feel about self-ID overall as a concept?
So I think that self-ID is very important. I live in the UK, which we have a very, it's so much worse than it is in America, where you can't self-ID. You have to go through 15 different therapists and doctors. Each of one can tell you and just stop it right in the tracks and be like, no, fuck you. We're not letting you transition. You're not who you say you are. We have lots of levels of that. And so self-ID for me is something that is required to give people autonomy to decide on their own gender and decide on how they are. And I think it's 100% worth it being quote unquote carried away, people going too far with it. I think that's entirely worth the hundreds of thousands more people who need it but can't access it. So right. I think it's.
But there's oh god, let's see if I can explain this properly. There's a tautological problem when it comes to self-ID, or if you're strictly going by you are whatever the hell you say you are. It goes I think it's tautological in the sense that it's a woman is someone who identifies as a woman, and who is oh my no, how do I do? Oh my god, I'm sorry, my brain's fucked. I'm trying to remember exactly. It's just essentially you're defining woman as whoever defines themselves as a woman, right? So the definition of woman is someone who defines themselves that way. So it's circular. There's nothing we can point to in reality that's one of my big issues. It doesn't seem to there's no solid ground to grab onto when it comes to self-ID. And plus you run into issues well, one of the big like conservative narratives when it comes to trans people is like, oh, they're going to try to like, if some dude's getting life in prison, he's just got, he could say, oh well, I'm actually a woman, and get sent to a woman's prison. It almost feels like self ID plays into that. Because if you can identify as whatever you want without having to do anything to like align yourself with that identity, or if there's like if you're defining that identity in such a way to where there isn't like anything in reality to like move to make yourself align more with that identity, then you can really just start doing that sort of stuff. Like under that like worldview, you can actually do that thing. Like if I'm going to prison, I'm going to say I'm a woman so that I can get into the women's prison, right?
Yeah. So Self ID does it does allow that to happen, but at the same time, it does also break down the idea that of genders. It's a well, if a woman can be anything and a man can be anything, what's the point? It's really it's something that like a lot of cis people don't like because they don't want to like imagine that they might have to make this extra choice. They might have to do this like extra stuff, and then also masculinity might be they might feel less of a man. They might feel less worthy if there's no clear distinction between men and women, socially at least.
Well, especially since like when it comes to that, like you were saying before, people are really good at just kind of looking at somebody and being like, oh, that's a man or that's a woman. And most people that are born into those categories seem to like fit pretty comfortably in there. And because of that, since it seems like we all kind of naturally think along those lines, we have a lot of structures and institutions set up around those ideas. So to just start like saying, oh, it doesn't matter, we can identify as whatever we want, it breaks the system to an extent. Well,
it entirely breaks the system, which is something that a lot of people quite rightly is terrified of, because it would require everyone in the world to start very quickly getting okay with a whole bunch of things. It's
well, it's not even that. It's like practical things. Like once again, we probably shouldn't have like the male and female prison population like together, right? Or as we define it now, we shouldn't have like those two groups of people like together. It seems like, well, women, once again, going back to like power and strength and like natural ability, like women would most likely not. I don't actually. That would be interesting. I have no idea what a mixed gender prison would look like. I wonder like how that would sort itself out socially. But like, oh god,
I think
sorry.
It is likely that it'll end up well as it ends up badly.
But because so you can recognize like that people that are born like with characteristics we associate with like women, they would have a huge disadvantage. And I mean, they would have some advantages, maybe like sexual appeal or something like that. But like when it comes to sheer power, being able to overpower people, men will essentially be able to do whatever the fuck they want with those women. A prison's already like scary enough. Just imagine like a woman getting thrown in with like a bunch of like male criminals, some of the most violent, impulsive people in the world. That
is something that is worth thinking about. And you are entirely you're right about the men could just very easily start doing very heinous things to the women in there. But
of course, once again, like when I play it out in my head, it would probably sort itself out in such a way to where like there would definitely be men willing to like protect the women in that sort of like situation, because like of course like men value women inherently and vice versa, right? So like it'd probably sort itself out in like a way to where like women wouldn't be getting absolutely fucked. But it's just
but there are those. They're criminals, right? So there are those people who will just take advantage of whatever they can when they can.
There'd be a lot of rape. I probably shouldn't say that, actually. Thank God you're saying. I'm still getting used to stream. Once again, I just have not been getting enough sleep. I should not be saying the R word out loud on stream. That's such a bad idea. Oh, no. I'm going to lump that in with the other thing I said when I was talking to PC Elitist. Look, if I get a strike, it's whatever. It'll be my first. Okay. Anyway, here, maybe that's not the best example of what I'm talking about. I think my main issue when it comes to self-ID is the tautological aspect of it. The fact that, like, if anybody can describe themselves or define themselves, identify as a woman or a man or whatever, those words become meaningless. Well, I think like words need to point to some truth, right? Like the reason we use words, like words do not have truth in and of themselves, but they point us to a truth in the world, right? As something discoverable, something we can like learn and know and understand. If you throw that truth aspect out, you basically just have an empty word, like this meaningless empty word. Like, no, never mind. I think that's pretty much What do you think of that?
I'm of the opinion that the words man and women are superfluous anyway. I think we're more we're better served by using terms like masculine and feminine to describe how we want to present, because again you do have a lot of men who you have bodybuilders, very masculine men, and you have very feminine men who they're portrayed as gay or camp because they're quite feminine. But
actually,
those
what you're describing right now like shows that there is utility when it comes to man and woman. Like using like terms like feminine, man. Like I understand exactly what you mean as soon as you say that. They're like things in reality that you're pointing to with those words. Well, and plus the fact that like more than 90%, I mean, like only what, like 0.5% of the world population is trans. The majority of people, the vast majority, fit into these categories pretty neatly, right? There is some differences here and there, but overall, it seems to work for the majority of people. I just don't see the sense in like breaking that for like 0.5% of people. I see the sense in like making room with like prefixes like trans and cis, but like to break those ideas entirely, it seems like they serve a purpose, and it seems like most people fit into them well enough. So I just don't see the point, I suppose.
That's very fair, and there is a lot of arguing about this, even within the trans community, about whether or not man and women are useful words, whether or not gender is useful at all. Because without the idea of gender, what are trans people? You know, it's really a hot debate in the LGBT community about what it all means and whether it's worth it, because it's like a lot of gay men will only sleep with cis gay men because that's what they're attracted to, and that's absolutely fine. If you don't have the terms for cis gay man, how do you know if you can be attracted to them? And it's
well, we would still know, right? The thing that it's pointing to, right? Like we would still know. We might think of it in different terms if we don't have those words, but like it would probably fall along similar lines to what we see today. Oh, and also, so you're cool with people having, I guess, genital preference. I'm not sure exactly. I can see us being like biologically hardwired. I can see that being a truth of the world. Like we're biologically hardwired to find a certain set of genitals attractive. But I was thinking about it. It's like, I don't know. If I see a pretty girl, like that gets me going, right? But like if I just saw a picture of a fucking vagina, I don't know if that's necessarily going to do it for me. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. That's not really, that's not the part that like, there needs to be other stuff there, not just like that one thing. You know what I mean? Or if I have a pocket pussy, I'm not going to look at that and be like, oh damn, I'm just instant like fucking. You know what I mean? Like it seems, it does almost seem like it is a preference.
That is something that it's entirely a preference. You can find someone incredibly attractive and then find out that they don't have the bits that you like, and that's entirely valid and fine, because it's if you're looking at someone, you're not reducing them to their genitals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so there is it's for a lot of people, a lot of trans people who are also pansexual, genitals don't matter, because they understand that it's not something that
I'm still listening, by the way.
They do see for a lot of people, they do see that the the genitals do make a huge part of their attraction, and that is something that is absolutely it's not something that we can debate. It's not something that we should debate, because once we start debating the idea that genital preference isn't a thing, then that it reduces people to sex objects. In my opinion, it really it sets us back and allows for transphobia to happen if we don't let people not like penises or not like vaginas. If we don't let people do that, then what's the point in freedom, you know?
No, I think it's ridiculous when people say that you need to be attracted, like, you know, like to a trans woman. If you're like, you've only dealt with like cis women for your entire life, then you have a trans woman, you find out, you know, there's, you know, the undersides going on. I think it's perfectly fair, yeah, for a man to like duck out at that point, because like, if that's not what you're into, then
if you wouldn't date someone because they're trans, and that's the only reason. Like, if you find them absolutely amazing in every other way, you know, if that's the deal breaker, that can be seen as transphobic.
Yeah, I would say so too. Like, the concept of itself is off-putting to you, rather than like just the scent of genitals. Yeah, that I could agree to an extent. Yeah, but yeah, like, yeah, overall, no one should ever be like, dude, I've been in situations where I've had like friends trying to push me to like date or, you know, like fuck this one person in our friend group. And when I'm just like not into it, feels so weird being pressured to like, you know, try to be with somebody that you just don't want to be with. That is just like fundamentally repulsive to me. That idea, I think it's gross. So yeah, like people should never be pushed into like, trying to be with somebody they just don't want to be with, whatever the reasons are. It overall, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. They should never be forced to like, but yeah, I agree. Like sometimes there's some trans, I bet there are a lot of guys out there that are off put by the idea of like trans women. But if it weren't for that weird ass ideology they have going on in their heads, I bet they would be into it. I bet they would be into like trans women overall. But yeah,
I don't understand why they wouldn't be into trans women, because I mean, a lot of them are fucking smoke shows. So it's weird to me that being trans is a deal breaker in and of itself. Having a dick, I understand being a deal breaker, because that's, some people don't.
Yeah. I wonder, and maybe I'm an outlier. It doesn't, like, I've had a wide range of experiences, and it's just a different thing to play around with. You know what I mean? Like, but like overall, I would say I'm attracted to femininity. That's where my focus for attraction is. Like the genitals are just kind of like, once again, it's just like a different experience. That's how I say it. But maybe I'm like an outlier there. Maybe most guys do, like, it's just like strictly they're hardwired. Like, I must have vagina. I don't know. But
I think I agree that you might be an outlier, but that's not it's not like, obviously it's not a bad thing. It's really no. It's pretty fucking based. It's a pretty good way of seeing the world. It's yeah. I don't know how else to put that. It's good.
All right, and now that I've said that, right, no one can ever call me transphobic. I have the shield. That's right. Aha. Oh, never mind. Sorry, that was stupid joke. Okay, I was just going for like an N-word pass sort of thing. Never mind. Okay, anyway. I was actually, okay, so it seems like, just to kind of take a step back, look at the conversation, and my brain's finally adjusted to like talking about this stuff, so I feel like I'm being a little more coherent. But so when it comes to transports, it seems like overall we more or less agree, except for the fact that you seem to think that strategy and differences in training play more of a role than I do. It seems like that's where we're kind of disagreeing, and then like genital preference and like overall trans acceptance and stuff, it seems like we're pretty much like on the same page. I was curious though. You said you're an anarcho-communist. So
yes.
I have, the only socialists I've like pulled on stream have essentially defaulted. They've like backed up to it's like market socialism. Like, you know, they give workers the means of production, but that's where we stop. That's literally all we want. I've been wanting to talk to just like a true pure blooded communist, someone that like really wants like, no, we need to take over the government. We need to get rid of money as a concept entirely. Like command economy, you know, is that kind of where you fall?
Yes. I don't like the idea that people are more important than other people. And I think as a bunch of communities working together, and if everyone's equitable, you give what you can, take what you need. I think that's how it should be. I don't like the idea of certain people, and they will be the financially elite. They will be the the current ruling class. I think they're that's inherently going to be unequal because people want their friends to be in power. You know, they want there to be an in group so that they can be better than everyone else. And so if like you cannot have people in charge of everyone if there's no one has power over anyone else, which is what we kind of need. We need a way that the people who have historically been shat on their whole lives and for all of history to be seen as equal, but not give them places of power because no one deserves to be in charge, and it's not a birthright. It's not there's no way to ethically dictate what's going to happen.
Sure. So how would you get us to that point where they're like, I've heard when it comes to communism, it's like the definition I've heard like over and over is that I kind of like, I'm kind of into like abolishing all unjust hierarchies. Is that more or less like what you're shooting for?
Yeah. So that like obviously as a group, you do need leaders. And you need people to like organize stuff, but they shouldn't be the one holding all the power and holding all the decisions, because we need because that inherently creates a power imbalance.
Well, right, but so like when it comes to that, so I've heard like let's say everybody's equal until you need to take out like a ship out to go fishing, and then it's really handy to have a captain. But when that person is in the position of captain, they do have the power. The simple fact that they are the ones commanding and leading and making the decisions, that grants them the power. So like you're never going to be able to get rid of that entirely, right? When it comes to leadership, power is always going to be involved.
But they're all working towards a common goal, and the output of that is everyone gets as much as they need.
Okay, so you're strictly talking resources and power then.
Yeah.
All right, so I can see that, like splitting up the fish, the catch, like evenly. Oh, this is one interesting idea I had about communism a long time ago. I was thinking about it. So let's say you do have this perfectly equitable, perfectly equal society. Everyone has, let's say, one power point, one unit of power, right? So what happens if there's no central government, no police or anything, basically everything's socially dictated. Let's say you have one really charismatic guy, one guy that's just really good at talking. He's really convincing. And he ends up convincing 12 people to give him their power points. So now he has 13 power points. There's automatically power imbalance. Since you have no central government or anything like that, maybe you could say socially, people might, but I mean, if they're all working like as individuals, but that creates an environment where like governments, little cancers in your system can start popping up and you have no real way of dealing with them effectively. Like, how would you solve for that?
So that's something that I don't often see as being like happening, because I think that humans are inherently respectful. We respect each other enough not to try and get to that point.
Really,
obviously, it's a very optimistic view on the world. It's not backed up by history or anything like that. But I in a situation like that, you'd have to
well, you'd have to go around convincing people to help you stop that person, which is like that's a like a coin flip, right? You might be able to get enough people together to like disband whatever the hell's going on with that, or maybe people don't care enough. And since you have no authority, no power, no central government to like help police these things, that one charismatic guy could kind of have his way with society, start convincing more people, establish his own government essentially, and all of a sudden you might have like a dictatorship popping up. And since they're more like there's like a central control there, they're going to be more organized and more capable of like getting the resources and power that they're striving for, right? Well, it's kind of like, okay, that's how I've always seen like mafias or mobs. They're like little governments, little cancers popping up in our own system, right? In our own government. But like we nowadays have a police force in like military and stuff to go in and take care of those, to kill off the cancers, or at least to suppress them to the point where they're not as much of a problem. Like we have systems in place to prevent that sort of thing, whereas a communist society wouldn't. So it's almost like an animal without an immune system. You know what I mean? It's going to die. Like it just will inevitably. If you don't have any sort of like, yeah.
That's assuming that there isn't that like the idea of self-policing and community policing isn't a thing. It's that assumes that the
Well, I've already acknowledged that, like, you yourself could go around trying to convince other people to help you stop what's happening, but that's a coin flip. Yeah, you don't know if you're actually going to be able to get enough people together. You don't know if anybody will even care to begin with, right? And once again, you have no authority over them, so you can't, like, make anybody do any of that, right? You can't make anybody help you. So, like, what I'm saying is there's no guaranteed system in place that will like strike back at something like that. As in, eventually, over time, you will get more and more of these, and one of them will stick.
Yeah, but if this is something I've like genuinely struggled with, like this exact idea is something that like I struggle to like work out and fit into my worldview, because it's something that you can't really know what's going to happen, what should be done about it until it happens, you know.
Well, so that's another problem I have when it comes to talking about. I have met so many communists online that have said, and I don't even know how I didn't come up with this argument like at the start. It's so simple. If your system hasn't been tried before, if you don't know what's going to happen, you can't really make any claims about it, right? But also, like when it comes to like, I would guarantee though, if you have a sort of like system in place, but you have like no police force, nothing to stop, like essentially like. Once again, a cancer, like a growth of government within your own system, it will collapse. It will be switched out with that government. And this will happen if you have a big enough society. You're going to get because really charismatic people are few and far between, right? But the more people you have, the more likely it is that one will pop up, and then like you'll get like Hitler 2.0 or whatever. Like eventually, somebody will be able to succeed, and your communist society will collapse under that. I think that's just inevitable. I don't see a way around that personally. Once again, it's like an animal without an immune system. There, like maybe some of the bugs that are attacking it, like it's not going to stick at first. It won't kill off the animal, but one eventually will. One will come around that will absolutely wreck its system, and it will die. That's how I see it. But I was going to say something, but sorry, go. You can talk about that. Yeah.
That is it's not something that I have a prepared statement to like.
Right.
Because it's not something that like comes up in communist communities, because we don't like talking about that kind of stuff.
I think it's important to talk about, but also we don't have to talk about like so we've strayed off the main topic. Like if you don't want to talk about this, like we can stop talking about this part whenever you want, because we didn't talk about actually talk about this. Like you're not, we didn't prepare for it or anything. So like it's cool if you don't want to like talk about it.
This is really interesting to me, because it's you're challenging my viewpoints with equally valid and like very, very good counters about like what would happen, and we're not like debating whether or not it's good or not. We're debating whether or not like how it would work, stuff. Which is we're basically talking about getting to the same place, and we're not like debating it. We're like we're talking about, okay, say this is the right thing, how would it work? Which is it's interesting, and it's something that I'm very excited to like talk about and like explain more, because the reason it's what drove me to being a communist in the first place was the problems with capitalism and the way that the world worked at the moment. It wasn't communism is great, it's capitalism sucks. And so I'm just such like that's the solution that I like hit on, and that's like what I think is the best solution. I'm not saying that it's perfect or like there's better solution, that there isn't better solutions, but that's the one that I found that like works the best in the way that my head works. But
Right, and I can see the appeal. Once again, I don't know if you watch Vosh. I used to watch Vosh. I can definitely see the appeal with those systems, but it seems like okay, we can focus on more of like the first steps, I guess, because communism is kind of like the end goal, right? Where socialism is kind of like the start almost. I know it's not an exact like 1-to-1. You go to socialism then communism, but it seems like that would be the path to communism more often than not. So, what would you do in order to, let's say, establish like workers controlling the means of production and getting rid of and by the way, that's how I see socialism: workers owning the means of production and abolishing the commodity form, getting rid of trade and money. Do you agree that is that your definition of socialism, more or less?
So my definition of socialism is it's complete democracy. So workers owning the means of production. Like a genuine democracy, because in like you've got the two-party system in America, we've got what the fuck we've got over here in England, and that is inherently not good democracy. It's we've got people who are centre right running for politics, and we don't really have any leftist discourse going on in politics.
Well, maybe in the UK, yeah. I would say in America it's still like pretty split. Even though I would say the Republicans have gotten a lot more extreme. The left has too, to an extent, and not nearly as much though. Dude, Trump is insane. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. So there's a joke. I don't know if you've come across this, but the joke is that the Democrats will still drone strike. They'll still raise taxes for the poor, but they'll do it with like a BLM sticker on it. So they are socially quite liberal, but they still perpetuate and make the and further the right wing's goals, even if it's like by accident. It's still what's like they're still viewed as quite right wing, in the grand scheme of things, which is obviously not great, but that is the leftist viewpoint on that. Because there's this theory that the conservatives, they'll always be very like extremist points on both ends. But we're slowly being pulled further and further right as time goes on. And so what used to be like Reagan used to be he was quite right wing at the time. Now he's considered more centrist, which is something that is it's a longer discussion. It's not something that like I'm smart.
And I would say it's more like, it feels to me like the left and right are more or less just pulling apart rather than one's pulling us in one direction. Because like, I guess the best way I've heard it explained is like we're almost functioning in different realities at this point. Like Trump people, they think the election was like fucking, it was fake, right? It was bullshit. Like Trump is like in their head still technically the president. Like there are certain like truths about the world, like actual facts, verifiable things that we disagree on, which is it should be impossible. That should never happen, but it is happening. So it's almost like the left and right are living in like their own separate bubbles, and like the more they don't communicate, the farther away they'll get pushed from each other, and all of a sudden you have two really, really polarized groups. That's more of how it feels to me, even though once again I would say, at least in America, the left is still like closer to center than the right is. The right is definitely pulled farther right. I would agree with that. But dude, that's some insane stuff when it comes. I feel like it's weird because I've been like doing online political stuff for years. I haven't really engaged, but I've been like a listener or whatever. And it was weird because I always thought of like socialism and communism, those ideas, to be almost like a solely online thing nowadays. But then I'll start seeing it pop up here and there in the real world. Like I've met like, anarchists, socialist communists. I was over in Oregon, and I was listening to this radio show, and apparently they had Richard Wolff on, which was kind of insane. Like to hear like this like really like intellectual guy, like a professor, right? Like who's like advocating for socialism, kind of jumping onto the mainstream a little bit. Like that was kind of so it really feels like in a lot of ways the left is kind of getting pulled to the left more as well, which worries me because I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that as time goes on, as these things come to light, as like it's entirely situational, because obviously people wouldn't be getting radicalized if there wasn't anything wrong, and so it's the left are seeing things like everything that's going on in Florida with Governor DeSantis, because he was I don't know what's happened in the last like 6 months, but he was like banning trans people, or at least trying to, and
Oh yeah, and then there's the abortion shit, of course. And I'm not sure if you heard about what's going on in Texas. I finally kind of familiarized myself with that. They're literally like rebelling against the federal government right now. They are like disobeying a ruling from the Supreme Court, which is insane. That's insane. So I feel like, yeah, there's definitely some crazy stuff going on with the Republicans. Dude, how do you? Oh my God, it's like they actually want to secede. Well, no, I'm not. Sorry, that's an extreme way to put it. It's literally just this one thing, but like the border stuff, they want to be able to dictate what happens on the border. But that's a federal thing. Immigration is like strictly like a federal domain. It does affect Texas like in a large way, but it's strictly like a federal domain. They're the ones that are supposed to rule on it, figure it out. But Texas has essentially said, "Fuck that shit. We're just going to do it all ourselves." So I have no idea what's going to happen with that. I have absolutely no idea. Very interesting though. But yeah, I would agree. The right wing, I mean, when it comes to abortion, trans stuff, and now like immigration, dude, oh my God. They're definitely, flying off the fucking handles. Way more than like,
I don't think they're flying off the handles. I think they're becoming more outward with it. I think they always wanted to do these things, but it's just become easier now.
I don't know about that. I mean, you could say the same thing about Democrats, right? Like Democrats want to the extreme form of like leftism is kind of what we were talking about, right? Like abolishing all unjust hierarchies, becoming like this genderless, like classless, moneyless society. I mean, that's also pretty extreme, right? Like, I wouldn't say that all like Democrats are necessarily like pushing for that. Just like I wouldn't say all Republicans are necessarily pushing for like some dictatorish, authoritarian like state or whatever.
You'll be hard pressed to find Democrats who openly push for moneyless, stateless, genderless societies.
Well, yeah, I feel like you'd be hard pressed to find any Republicans that are like, "Oh yeah, we should have a dictatorship. We should absolutely lock down the borders, stop all immigration." Like, I don't think I've ever met a Republican that's ever said anything close to that.
You do know that Trump exists, right?
Well, yeah, but no, they're not trying to. No, the idea with a wall isn't to like completely block off any and all immigration. It's just to make it so that like illegal immigrants can come in, right? Like that's their main concern. Even though, like, I mean, planes exist, so a wall's not exactly.
Walls were shit. You could just walk through them.
No, it's basically it's like his hook in a song or whatever. That's literally all it is. It's just like a catch line. He's got it.
Yeah.
But no, like I would say I've said this before. I live in a pretty conservative area, so I'm like exposed to a lot of like when I go to the grocery store, at work, stuff like that. I get exposed to a lot of. I say exposed. That makes it sound bad. I am kind of immersed in a lot of right-wing talking points and what people believe. A lot of people aren't really that extreme about it. Like, I bet you anything, if I went outside, talked to my neighbor, he'd be like, oh yeah, as long as immigrants come in through the legal channels, right, and we only take in a certain amount or whatever, then like I'm fine with it. A lot of them would say that. I don't think most of them do want like the extreme version of what's being talked about, I guess. Maybe abortion, maybe I could see that. A lot of them do seem to be really, really against abortion. I could give you that. And the vaccine shit, that's also weird. But I don't know. Sorry, I started. I'm in a tangential, rambly mood. I'm sorry, and you can cut me off whenever. By the way.
So what I was saying with that was the left has gone a lot more extremist in response to that, and then the right obviously has gone more extreme in response to that as well. And so they do kind of play off each other, and they will by the, like, it's the natural order, I guess you could say, is to become more and more diametrically opposed, to fight each other more and more viciously and more with more extremism, because that's how, if someone disagrees with you, you want to tell them that they're wrong. That's just how that's how we are as people. We don't like being told we're wrong, and so people will automatically go further down the pipelines to being anarcho-communist, to being crypto-fascists. It's something that it is happening, but it's not. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing unless the bad guys win.
But see, that's the problem. Like, who are the bad guys? I mean, like, and also when it comes to disagreements, like, just to make it clear, they're not just disagreements, right? These are like very practical, real world, like these things we're talking about that like affect everybody's lives. Like when it comes to abortion, for instance, like I've said this a million times, like Republicans, they're not doing it because they're evil or whatever. They actually think there's like a baby genocide going on, right? Like, I mean, if that's how I saw it, I would want to stop a baby genocide. Like, who wouldn't want to stop baby genocide? So it's like philosophical, like fundamental disagreements where there isn't any real clear answer. You can point to like one being more effective than the other, but when it comes to what is real and what is not, like, you know, when does a fetus become a baby? Those things purely philosophical, and the problem is there's no concrete answer, but they have some like massive real world effects, and that's why there's so much. It's so like just vicious fighting. I don't know what the solution is either. Are we just going to become more and more polarized to the point where there's like civil wars breaking out across the Western world, or like I have no idea.
I think that is where we're headed. I obviously call for revolution all the time, but I've seen more and more people who I previously saw as quite centrist. My dad was actually quite conservative for quite a while, and he's becoming more and more disillusioned with it all, and he is becoming more left wing. I don't know where I was going with this.
By the way, real quick, I just realized my mic was turned down somewhat far. Have you been able to hear me okay this entire time?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
As well.
Okay, sorry. I'm here. I've just been a bit spacey. Once again, I didn't do the basic setup things I needed to do for this stream. Fuck. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
There was the idea that I forgot her name now. Ariel was talking about she's the middle ground. Which is for something that conservatives do all the time, where they say that they're the middle ground in order to make public perception.
Right, they use common sense. They're the reasonable ones. Like, everybody likes to believe that about themselves. I think it's really stupid when someone says that sort of stuff. It's like, well, like for me, I wouldn't call myself like the middle ground. I'd say I'm pretty far left. But I don't think that implies that there's some unreasonableness in my positions. I think it's really stupid to see it that way. Yeah, no, I would agree.
I had a good giggle when she talked about the alphabet community. That was quite funny. Because it's joke that Republicans hate the alphabet mafia because we're ruining their lives.
And that's so stupid because, of course, like the LGBT community is going to like slowly expand. Well, they're slowly going to broaden their umbrella over time and include like other like groups that don't have much of a voice. Like asexuals are a great example. Like, I mean, I don't think anybody was really talking about it before, like the LGBT community. Like, I mean, yeah, like. It's good to have like a group that helps when it comes to representation for like super minority groups, right? Like it's good to have someone that's pushing for, you know, like their stuff, helping them out. I think that's a good thing overall.
The LGBTQ community and the left wing community as a whole is an inclusive community, which is why queer people gravitate towards the left because they feel included, and conservatism is about keeping the status quo. It's about not expanding, and so so it kind of makes sense that the alphabet mafia are becoming more left wing because they don't have a space in right wing politics, right wing academia, because they just don't.
Right. Well, even though it seems like when it comes to black people in particular, I have no idea why they're supporting Trump so much. Like when it comes like as a group, like what's the appeal there? What's the incentive? I want to look into that more. But it's interesting. Republicans might actually end up broadening their umbrella a little bit because of how things are. Well, it just kind of looks like things might actually be shifting a little bit, at least in America, which would be interesting. But no, overall, I would agree that the left tends to be more inclusive than the right, for the simple fact that they're more about like, you know, the tradition and preserving like what we have and all that, like that just automatically brings along like exclusivity to an extent, right?
Yeah. And that's not saying there's anything particularly wrong with being exclusive, but there's nothing inherently right with it either.
I would say like being exclusive, like having an exclusive sort of ideology when it comes to like building a society, that is probably bad. That is probably a bit bad.
When it comes to building society, yeah. But like in general life, you have your friends, and there's people that you don't like, and you don't want them to let them in your friend group. That kind of thing. That is a thing, and it does make people's lives better because you can't like everyone. I have people at work that I want to throttle. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be friends with everyone.
Oh right, like in a broad sense, that like making sure we're not cutting people off from like basic human rights, because you know certain traits they're born with. I suppose that's what I mean when it comes to when I say like inclusivity or they're exclusive and all that. But no, I understand like with the analogy you're trying to like wrap it onto. I would say it's a little like there's definitely a difference. Well, I guess. I would say I don't know. I'm sorry. Keep going.
On a wide scale, exclusivity is bad because then you end up with things like whatever the fuck's going on in Florida, where trans people are now being like effectively being pushed out of the state, and it also ends up with things like what's going on in Israel and why the fuck are we bombing Yemen again? That's because
we can talk about that a little bit if you want. Real quick, I want to avoid talking about the Israel-Palestine stuff specifically because I am not informed on that conflict whatsoever. But really, the Houthis, what do you think about those guys?
I don't even know what's going on, to be honest.
I think that's where the majority of people are at. Yeah, it seems like they're just like, why?
There's not enough about it. I'm getting all of my world news from fucking TikTok at the moment because I don't know. Like the coverage is so bad on everywhere. Like Boris Johnson is doing something stupid again in England, and that's covering up the news about whatever's going on in the Middle East.
Wait, is he actually? What is it? He's not doing anything when it comes to like getting rid of like protections for like news organizations and stuff, is he?
Oh no, he's not in power anymore, and so he's just doing stupid shit. He's saying dumb shit, and some stuff that he's done in the past is coming back up, and it seems like the media is using old stories and new, like, different things to distract us from the fact that there is effectively a war going on. There is a war going on in the Middle East, and that's my view on it, because
well, here
the same night that I heard about what was going on in Israel and Gaza from TikTok, on the news, it was the Metropolitan had shot 2 dogs in broad daylight. The police had just executed a couple of dogs out of the blue. But that was on the news. So they're very much using problems in-house to distract us from what we're doing in the greater world.
I would be careful to write that stuff off as like distracting people. It seems like news organizations are geared towards, like attention, right? It's like an attention market. So they're probably just going to be covering whatever is going to get people attention. If you're sitting there covering like a war over and over and over and over and over, like that, people are going to become desensitized, bored, and just like not pay attention to you anymore, right?
Yeah. But that's it's one of those things that it's happened quite so regularly and quite so consistently that that it's possible. It's easy to see. It's easy to get the idea that they're doing that, because that is what it looks like they're doing, because it's so consistent. And at the complete other end, what is more crazy and what's more wild than like what's more sensationalist than a new war? We've like in the last 2 years we've had Ukraine, Russia. I don't know what's going on with that anymore. We've got Palestine, Israel, and we've now got Yemen, which is somehow connected with it all.
Well, and it can also be like just like like where you're getting your news from as well. Like yeah, I don't. But real quick, I wanted to say, just like with the Houthis, I did a little bit of research when it comes to those guys. They've been in a civil war for like a fucking decade, and they say they're trying to protest Israel's war with Palestine, right? They're trying to, that's why they're like pirating ships. The thing is, I think there might have been one Israeli ship they took over. Maybe if it might not have been a single one. Actually, it looks like from an outside perspective, they are just randomly pirating ships. I have no idea how that's a protest. I have no idea how that's connected to the war at all. Well, it's because it's not. They're using the protest as a pretense to justify the pirating. That's exactly what it looks like. And then I heard this one guy, I made a video on him. He said something along the lines of, oh, well, they hit some U.S. ships to try to get the U.S. to like do something like to stop the Israel-Palestine war. But like the obvious conclusion to that, the obvious outcome is what's happening right now. The U.S. is like fucking them up. Like, so they've gone insane. That's what it looks like overall. They've gone insane. They are in the middle of a civil war, and they've decided to piss off the most powerful country in the world. I have no idea what the fuck's happening with that. I don't know why you would do that. No idea.
Yeah. I haven't. I haven't seen very much of it to like know what's going on, or like I didn't even know that they were like hitting ships until I saw your video on it, and I saw your video right when I was about to go to work last night, so I don't know what's going on, so I can't really like talk about that. But if they're just pirating random ships, then that is the most stupid thing I've ever like.
Well, yeah, they're pissing off the world, dude. Like they're disrupting global trade. There's like a shit ton of like just like fossil fuels passes through the Red Sea. Like it's like I know for when it comes to seaborne oil, it was 15% of it passes through the Red Sea. Like it's an important trade route. So yeah, they're fucking with everybody.
Really destructive. It's like the like when the canal got crashed into the Suez Canal. That is really disruptive. To blocking off trade routes will just stop things from happening. So that is a way of, I guess it's a way of trying to just like get action to happen. But like we're taking over the Red Sea until you fix whatever the fuck's going on in Palestine.
Yeah, but all they really accomplished was all they really accomplished was getting a war with America. So I don't. Well, and that seems like a really predictable outcome too. So I don't know why. It seems like no. My impression, like, okay, if I were really trying to like reason it out from their perspective, you're in the middle of a decade-long civil war. Resources, you probably gonna want to like get your hands on whatever the fuck you can. So like pirating ships is a really good way to go about that, right? You get a shit ton of resources that way. I would imagine that's probably why they're doing it. They probably just straight up need the resources, so they're resorting to pirating, and then they're trying to justify it by we're protesting. But in reality, it's a very practical reason why they're doing it. They just need the resources to continue their war effort. That's a guess on my part, but that's the only way. Like if I were the leader of the Houthis, that's the only line of logic I could follow. Like in order for me to like see why they would be doing that. But yeah. But no,
Yeah,
I understand. If you don't, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
That's a. I can't think of any other reason they would do it as well. Like off the top of my head, unless they really did all of a sudden get decide that their civil war can be on pause for a moment and they can protest Israel against Palestine. I don't think that's going to happen because they're in the middle of a war. The only thing that they really are afforded to care about is if they win or lose. So the getting resources is something that is an army wants on their stomach. So you need resources, and I think it's a very. I think you could be right on the money there, but again, I don't know what's going on over there. I'm just going off what I'm hearing from you.
Right. I know, and yeah, if you like don't want to say anything about it, I get that. And also, I could be wrong. I didn't do like extensive research on this. I'm not even very familiar with like the war, the civil war in Yemen. I don't even know when it started overall. So like, I'm not like the most knowledgeable when it comes to this subject. I just try to like cover as much as I can given the time I have. That's how I do it. But.
Yeah, that's all we can really do as all that. The informative YouTube channels can do is work on what they know, and like obviously you upload quite frequently, so you don't have an infinite amount of time to do loads of research. You're not like you don't upload one video essay every 6 months kind of thing.
Exactly. I'm like an opinion channel. I just come out and say like, this is what I think about that. Even though I do want to shift more towards doing like research videos or just having more research to back up my opinions when it comes to making videos, because that's the main source of pushback I've gotten from people. And it would be really nice when I'm arguing with people if I could have a little bit more of a stable, a stable ground. And that's one of the reasons why I've gone to like that. I'm starting to upload just like every other day. That'll give me more time. Oh my God, it was at a point, and it's really frustrating actually. All it takes is for you to just like glance at my videos, and you can see for like a month and a half, I was uploading a video every day. And like people have come at me, criticized like, why didn't you do a shit ton of research for this? Why didn't you blah 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 blah? And it's like it already takes me like. I don't even know how long. It takes me a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of effort to like. It might seem like low quality videos and whatnot. It's still like the production. Well, I would say that the production value for a new channel is decent, but it's still it takes me a while to like actually produce and upload these videos. So to like put hours of research on top of that as well. Like I just can't do it. I just don't have the time. And people that criticize, I always ask them is like, you obviously don't run a YouTube channel. You obviously don't upload videos. You obviously don't understand. And they're like, well, they always say like, well, yeah, I don't, you're right. But, and I'm just like, after that, but I'm just done. I'm just like, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Kill me. But I do want to lean more into, especially with these live talks. Actually, me and the PC elitist, or the PC elitist and I, we're going to be having another Trump talk, and we're both going to separately do some research and grab up some examples of what we're talking about to support our arguments. And then I really like that idea. Oh, same with Andrew Camden. I still need to get on top of my research when it comes to him and social capitalism, or his idea of it. But sorry, I'm rambling again. But overall, I want to do more research. That's kind of what I'm getting at. But
yeah. And that is honestly the best thing that like actually wanting to like challenge, like do more research and like work out what actually is going on and what like actually is happening is something that you don't see a lot with the current opinion sphere. You've got the leftist YouTube, which is like super long videos or like really, really in-depth research. they're their own thing, but you don't get very many like opinion content creators who genuinely have a valid basis for their opinions. They're just like, this is what I believe, and I'm going to ignore things that don't coincide with that.
Right, and it's actually really fun. So I've gotten the majority of the comments I've gotten. Sadly, people that don't like my videos are more likely to comment than people that did. So the majority of the comments I've gotten have been really negative. Just hundreds of people shitting on and challenging my beliefs. But it's kind of cool because I'm crowdsourcing like political opinions almost, or like I'm debating like so many different people at once, and it helps me kind of. It helps me establish my arguments better, or like it just helps me. I can't think of the word. Well, some topics I have given a little bit. I've admitted like, okay, I was wrong here. Like a really stupid simple one was calling America a democratic republic. Democracy is baked into the word republic, so it like that democratic part is meaningless. I did not know that. I had no idea. That's why I was taught in U.S. government. Okay, it was wrong. My teacher was stupid. So like I'll give like if somebody says I'm wrong, I'll look it up and see like okay, and that's actually when I do my research is when I'm like talking to people in the comment section. I don't research for the videos, but after when I'm having the arguments, that's when I start to do my research. But it helps me. Well, first off, it gets me to do research. Secondly, it helps me bolster my arguments for the opinions I have, and thirdly, it helps me like correct like mistakes I have when it comes to my worldview. So like overall, fighting with all these people has actually really helped out when it comes to just having a more grounded worldview. So it's actually really cool. It's a weird experience, but it's super awesome.
Yeah, it's fighting with people is the best way to learn new things. If if you go on Reddit and you post the best way to get an answer on Reddit is to post the wrong answer.
All right, yeah.
So if you're confused about something, you just go argue with someone about it, and then they'll tell you what's actually true.
Yeah, and plus, like being able to come up with like analogies and stuff, or like hypotheticals. There are a few I've fallen on. When it comes to communism, doing like the Vanguard Party thing. It seems like Vanguard parties are never able to establish a government that actually sees the establishment of socialism or communism. They can never do it like effectively. So I compare it to like a type of bullet that has a primer that never goes off. The primer just never fucking works. Maybe if the primer did initiate, after the pin hit it, maybe that bullet could actually get somewhere, do some damage, do some like good. It would be effective. But the problem is the primer never actually goes off. So what's the point never actually like trying to use that bullet? Like I love analogies like that, and I came up with that analogy by like fighting with communists and shit. But
yeah, that's a really good analogy actually, because unless something happens, nothing's going to happen.
Right. So like, yeah, the system itself might be good. It might actually work. But if you can never actually take the steps necessary to get there, then it's like it's a non-starter. Yeah.
Yeah. It's if there's no point going towards something if it's not going, if you can't get the initial action to happen.
Yeah.
That's entirely true. I just we're working on getting that initial reaction to happen.
No, I know, and of course, it's not like every idea in the world's been tried yet. There's still plenty of possibilities when it comes to being able to establish systems like that. It just seems like it doesn't, like as the world stands, doesn't seem to be practical. But wait here, so we've been talking for a little bit. I think I have to wrap it up. Are there like any like last things you wanted to touch on?
Not particularly. I think I've touched on everything that kind of jumped out at me from your video. So
okay,
and more as well, actually. So
well, in the future, yeah, if you want to talk about any of my other videos, or there's just like a random topic you want to talk about or whatever, you can just email me. Yeah,
will do. Fantastic. I've had a lot of fun today. So
yeah, it was fun talking.
Thank you.
Yeah, and nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Yeah, thank you for the convo. All right, have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, that was Joanna, a trans woman from the UK. Very interesting talk. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and I love it, guys. Bye-bye. Almost. I actually have to come over here to end the stream. Almost bye-bye. Bye-bye in 5, 4, 3, 3, 2. Oh my God. Where's the live stream located? Hold on. Am I going live on this end stream? There we go. All right. Love you guys. Bye-bye.